Hello, welcome to my video from sunny Thailand, although not so sunny today. Um, Out here for a month doing a fitness trip where I get fit and ideally thinner and healthier, and then also hopefully cut down and ultimately quit smoking. Um, so fingers crossed, it's going well so far. It's only been a few days, but as a result, I've been off the charts and not really on the ball with what's going on. So I thought it was about time I did an update. I am the boss of technical issues, so I don't think I'm going to be able to stream out here. It's going to have to be videos. So I thought I'd do a few little videos today. Hopefully, I'm going to have time. I've had problems with the camera and the microphone and the computer and the internet. So hopefully this time will work, and then I can do a update of Bitcoin and Ether now, and then maybe the majors, and then the alts that have come up for the alerts, and some general comments on the alts a bit later. So firstly on Bitcoin, so obviously we've had this move up, and sort of the question is, are we bullish or are we bearish? So for the bulls, firstly, obviously we've had a bounce. We didn't quite get to the long entries that I wanted on the higher time frame, but Bitcoin, when it wants to be bullish, can do that. It doesn't always go back to test your ideal zones. And secondly, we do have a historic pattern that's very similar. So this pattern back from 2020, where we had a triangle consolidation, a distribution, which then looked like it might go back through this consolidation, but actually, in fact, bounced higher, consolidated again for the bigger move up. And I think it does actually keep going from here. So that's kind of the bull thesis. The difficulty is, sort of where that sits with the rest of the market, and is what are the indices doing, like what's the US economy doing, and things that kind of really affect this. Oh, we're now much more affecting this due to the ETF involvement and ETFs being much more influenced by what traditional finance is doing than we've had previously. But that would be the bull thesis from a structural perspective. Um, on the lower time frame, we unfortunately didn't get my long entries in either of them. So I did acknowledge that we came down into a daily demand here, but my entry at that point was slightly lower in the 8 hour inside, which it didn't quite get to. And then the same again here, unfortunately. There was a daily demand in here, so I was looking for maybe taking out the stops of these sort of whatever weeks that was in mid-April, and coming down into this zone. Korea did bounce on this zone, so maybe it was front run on that basis. And then also, I guess the weakness of the dollar has pushed this, or pushed this relative to the Korea pair anyway. So, do I want to long those if we come back? And that's kind of where the bear thesis comes in, that there are similarities. So what I don't love about this, let me just hide the drawing so I can show you, but the similarities to this pattern here, and I kind of noted this actually more on Ether, and Ether's possibly now looking a little bit different, but I'll get to that. But, where we'd had, the sort of the drop, we came through, we consolidated in this triangle, and then we ran up. And the reason I wasn't loving this, well, this didn't happen on a Monday, Tuesday. Again, it's not ideal. It tends to not be ideal if we run straight up on a Monday, Tuesday, because then that can mean the rest of the week is down, unless the market is just extremely bullish. And I'm just in two minds as to whether I do think the market is extremely bullish. If it is, I don't know where it's come from, because Tradfi is still messing around, and so I guess Bitcoin was counter to the indices, which dropped on Monday, and Bitcoin still held, so that was good. But I'm not really sure where this is coming from. There's been sort of bits of news about Trump and partnership with Crypto.com or something like that, so uncertain. But I'm concerned here that we're going to get this sort of move up, triangle consolidation, and then a distribution that runs straight back through it. And I'm particularly concerned about that because we have, obviously we're back hitting this monthly supply. So we had some interim shorts in here that I talked about before, and the most recent one just didn't really give much of a move, did give a reaction. Then I was looking for a swing fail above these two highs, which, again, just gave a tiny reaction on a very low time frame and then just ran through yesterday. But now we're back up in monthly supply, 61 fibs a little bit higher, 3 week and weekly zones a little bit higher. And obviously we can go high in the monthly supply if we want, it's left equal highs up here. Um, so we just need to see the reaction and see whether this is going to have, continue momentum from here. But again, on the data side, there's a few things that are pros and cons on that as well. So I'll come to that in a minute. But yeah, so my concern is, oh, not that one. I did draw this before, that we're going to get this sort of move from here, or maybe from a little bit higher. Um, so then I don't really know if I want to be longing. I mean, you can still look, if this swing fails, long it by all means, but I wouldn't blindly long this one. This one I'd be maybe more confident of, and then in the same vein as this, if we do follow this similar pattern here, this did come back down to a 12 or 8 hour demand at the base that obviously hadn't been tested previously before bouncing. So then, maybe we'd get that higher low. Failing that, I'll just see what new PA is put in. It does have 3 day and 4 day demand in here, so maybe it's possible that we just get a bounce straight off the top of here if it were that easy. Um, but I just don't like the stops that have been left, and I don't like the fact there's a lot of longs. There's going to be a lot of longs and a lot of liquidation. So I did try and load my liquidation earlier, so you can see now that we did have a run up that actually took out a lot of shorts this morning. It's left some more stops above here, but you can see how many long stops are now running below that haven't been targeted. Let me see if I can load this for a higher time frame just so we can see what's actually loading. So yeah, it's obviously left stops below 84k, which I think is where that crosses on mine, and that's when there's more of the stops down there. But the other thing we saw on that we could see on the data, let me go to, I've closed the, this is going to load for me. So what we could see when we look at the EXO data is that really a lot of the longs were going in at the tops. And so obviously they've subsequently ended up not being the top. So those people are actually have been okay. But for example, here you can see there was a last pump, the pump had happened and then there were longs going in that last section of it. And in this case, I guess they did close or get stopped out. Oh no, sorry, they got closed because we pumped again from there. So in that case, some closed. And then, similarly here, we had people longing the top there, and then either they did get stopped out there or they're still holding. Um, and here, again, like it's more gradual here, but again, the people weren't longing in the bottom sections. They've been longing after or during pumps. And similarly, the shorts have been, so shorts are going in at the tops, and then shorts are then getting stopped out or closing on the sort of smaller time frames. Um, but then when I was looking at, let's go to the CVDs. So the spot CVDs also aren't really supporting this up move. The only thing that's supporting this up move is the ETF data, which I'll look at in a moment. But so again, we had, like I've got this on the 15 minute, and it doesn't look bad on the 15 minute. But if you look back, and again, I won't load it now, but if you look back on the 4 hour or the hourly, you'll see these CVDs aren't strong. So this top one's the Coinbase CVD. So there was a lot of buying there in New York yesterday, so that's not surprising that it's come up. And they did at least buy at these sort of lows or the low of yesterday. And the same on Binance. But yeah, I probably need to scroll back to show you on this. If you scroll back, you can see in the grand scheme that isn't actually, it isn't actually, while the price is coming up, this is actually a divergent CVD on the higher time frame, and it's the same for Binance. For some reason, this one isn't loading now, but so what we did see is rising CVDs on futures. So that's not ideal, and normally that would mean that it's futures driving the price, and then it would probably come back down again. But the only other thing is, let me just go on to the ETFs, is that finally we did get some buying on the ETFs on Monday and yesterday. So we had 381 million on Monday and 720 million yesterday, which is also significantly higher than we've had all month and probably for the last 3 or 4 months. And even yesterday, I don't think the BlackRock data's come in yet. It might not all the data might not be in full yet. So Yeah, so I'm a little in two minds. So we do have this, so on the bull side, we do have ETF flow coming back in, net flows being positive. Um, but derivatives are just sort of being messy, like people are longing tops and shorting bottoms. And so I think we're getting liquidations on both sides and squeezing, or sorry, well, mainly short squeezing at this stage. We've, as I've said, on the liquidations left, all these longs happily sitting happy below. And, when that happens, they do tend to get taken out. It's just a question of when they get taken out. So, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is just the bulls are back in, and the longs are going to get left alone. If we have gone back into a bull run, and if that is the bottom, then um, the chances are the longs will get left alone, and then we will never go back to see them. But coming up into monthly supply, that just makes me a little bit more skeptical. I just want to load the indices just to show you. Yeah, so indices have really just been messing around sideways. So then, they're nowhere near as bullish. Why has it disappeared? Nowhere near as bullish the as Bitcoin has been. They're still very much in the lower range. But then they also, having said that, they did get a bigger move up last or the start of the month than Bitcoin had. Um, then we had a drop at, as I say, on Monday, we had Dow and S&P hit my lows, where S&P didn't quite hit the zone. Nasdaq was just short of the zone as well and short of the alert. Um, so yeah, are we going to continue? Let me just look at S&P, so again, this is a sort of similar scenario to Bitcoin as well, actually. Like I had all the alerts on these go for the lows, but we also did slightly front run the lows. So in this case, yearly demand on S&P, slightly front run. I feel like maybe Nasdaq was the only one that did actually hit. Whereas the others, all my alerts went, but all were virtually all just above the level when they had the first bounce. So I'm still in two minds again. Like, are we gonna, just go back up, like hit supply, and then come back down and retest that low? So that's the concern. And if that does happen, okay. So I mean, the next supply on S&P, for example, is a bit higher. Nasdaq already hit it. But if we do reject here or even now and come back down, obviously then Bitcoin's going to get, it's going to take out the previous low and follow that bearish pattern that I put. Um, that's Bitcoin. So the other thing to be conscious of, at least today, so I think I said before, yeah, I'm not looking for longs here. We are in monthly supply. We do have a weekly above, so I'd be more inclined to look for lower time frame entries for shorts now. Um, Maybe like waiting at least until New York today and see what happens there. This long is very tentative. That long may be better. Preferred still 72K if it's given. Be conscious on, there's a couple of things to be conscious of. So be conscious of CME, obviously hasn't quite hit that monthly level yet. So again, we could get another push on that. It's also left this CME gap below overnight. So because it's pumped in Asia. Um, so another thing to be conscious of. Korea is a little bit out of alignment. So I don't know how much I can use this right now. It doesn't have monthly supply. It's got these sort of offset 2 week and weekly, but then it's only got a 3 day, 5 day. So I mean, this isn't really significant supply on the Korea pair. But then similarly, we haven't really bounced in significant demand. The demand on Korea is a lot lower. Um, and because of this wick, it made it, yeah, it was just difficult. Obviously, it made just a slightly higher low based on that wick, but this has been less useful at the moment for confluence. And then finally, I guess on the US dollar dominance pair. Um, so again, on the bear side, we've broken trend, so bullish for Bitcoin. We've broken that trend. We're in 2 months supply, and then this monthly that we swing failed previously. Um, so it's a question of, and now we've just broken that low. So essentially, we're just on a lower low at this point. But is it a lower low, or is it just going to be a swing fail of that low before running back up? So, and if you look back again, the August 2024 was this section on there, and again, if you can see the similarities here, um, before running back up through. So are we going to get something like that in there that mirrors this? And again, the context is different, so I don't know if I really should be comparing it. But I mean, certainly the local PA is very similar. This didn't make a higher high after this, so maybe this just comes back into here. It's also got the 4 day supply in there. So it's are we going to do this and going to get still a decent run, which obviously then this would take Bitcoin back down to my lower long entry, or potentially we're kind of in this area and we're starting to reverse now. Maybe we've excuse me, maybe this is the start of the decline, and we've got the similar here that we've got this start of a decline. So really what we're looking for now on this is ideally a bounce now, and then are we going to get a rejection in here or in the daily supply above, and there's the 4 day supply, or in the daily supply above. And hopefully, Bitcoin won't put up just a massive pump and have this just drop straight down in here. But if it does, it does. Like, I'm on holiday, so I do need to start trading again at some point soon. But I want to wait until I'm kind of got into a better routine here first. And then I was kind of examining this in the bigger picture as well, and it's again challenging. Let me see how long I've been going. 15 minutes. That's good. So this is a larger double bottom. You just go to my watch list, Bitcoin, because it looks, so this is just the US dollar dominance chart, and obviously it's the larger double bottom, and it makes it look sort of more like it could break out. But I mean, it really is also, it still is a lower high here. So we're still like lower low coming in here, or yeah, lower low, lower low, lower low, and lower high. So this could still come down and break the bottom, and obviously that would mean Bitcoin making a new high. But then you've got the double bottom in there. So like again, I'm uncertain. When I look at the including USDC and DAI, I don't know if DAI is so relevant, but USDC um, is obviously a lot bigger than it was previously. So I don't know whether I should sort of start using this chart more, but I always sort of seem to find the US dollar tether tends to be more reliable. But again, you can see here we had this kind of double bottom with the lower high, and this actually had a higher low. And oh no, it did take, it was a swing failure, so it did take out the low there. So similar to here on a much smaller time frame, we did take out the low. So are we just going to fall off from there? Obviously that would mean epic bull run back in progress. And then again, this has also made a double top here. So I guess it's very different to the US dollar dominance chart. So the US dollar tether dominance chart is up here, or has come up and tested this 3 month supply, whereas this is significantly lower. And then I don't know what this one is now. This was my one with BUSD with the Binance stablecoin. Doesn't seem to want, maybe the Binance stablecoin. Oh, okay, but so obviously that's not relevant anymore because Binance stablecoin has gone. But again, just structurally, so this has come up into a weekly supply here, but also hasn't hit that monthly supply above. So yeah, I'm still in two minds, but I mean, really, at the end of the day, I guess we're at the top of a range. No matter which chart you look at, we're in this local range. We're at the top of the range, so we should be more short bias, which then would mean being long biased on Bitcoin. So yeah, you can see like from all this anyway, hence my sort of a higher time frame indecision at this point. And so at this point, like I'm just looking for that bounce, maybe a little bit lower before we get it, based on where Bitcoin's at, and CME, maybe a touch higher on those. Hopefully, get some sort of a rejection. So look for shorts, later today or tomorrow, and then just see what reaction we get on the retest. Are we going to hold this 4 day demand? So yeah, I'm still, like I say, I don't really want to put long entries in, but I'm always more reluctant to put longs because I tend to be I prefer shorts. I find the structures easier to see. But there is a 4 day demand in here, so you can look for longs around what's this sort of 82, 83K area with either the swing fail or just somewhere in the 4 day, or on this 8 hour below, and then the bigger picture investor kind of entries are below 72K. And yeah, short side, like I say, a little bit higher. So that's kind of really it on Bitcoin. Yeah, sorry, a little bit indecisive, and sorry I didn't manage to get any better long entries on this. Got a lot more long entries on alts at least. Ether. It's another interesting one. Actually, one other thing I just want to say on Bitcoin, or not Bitcoin itself, but is the grayscale chart. So this actually was more apparent that the breakout was coming. Where is it? This was more apparent because it had a sort of a cleaner little descending wedge there. And again, has some space to 2 week monthly supply in there. So again, like I say, we're like waiting to see when New York opens because New York is going to probably gap up on this. But look for the confluence on these and see if we get the rejection in there later. I think there's also some PMI news this afternoon in New York. So again, that's likely to affect the indices, which then in turn could affect Bitcoin and the results you get here. So keep an eye on those. Let me have a look at what Ether looks like on this. So Ether, I was kind of looking at this like trickle down, which we've kind of got at least for the last few weeks. So it's still got a bit of space for weekly demand and or 3 month demand. But yeah, that doesn't really add much. And then the large caps, which is predominantly made up of Bitcoin, is again got, so we've had a little break of that falling wedge, similar to the Grayscale BTC pair, but again isn't quite where I want it. Um, yeah. So anyway, like I said, I'm just a little bit indecisive. Is this a bearish retest or is it the start of the next bull run? Situation uncertain. But as it stands, I would say, on just based purely on the Bitcoin US dollar chart alone, if I ignore even the other factors, yeah, I wouldn't be longing today. I would just sort of wait and see what structures are put in and what lower time frame entries are given in either direction. But like my preference wouldn't be to long today. I think it's moved up too much. It's the middle of the week. We might get that midweek reversal and the rejection of the monthly supply. Um, so yeah, moving on to Ether. So Ether, interestingly, so finally getting some sort of a bounce on Ether, but again, like it's just we've come back down now into this 6 month level here. Monthly sitting on top of that 6 month, and it's obviously gone again deeper and deeper into that. The the Ether dominance pair, which I actually haven't looked at, I'll look at in a minute with the other dominance and market cap pairs, but the Ether dominance pair has taken out this low now. So we could see, that swing fairly. Maybe it is Ether's time. And someone in the group did actually post some news. There was some news that VitalX done something technical that might give a boost to Ether now. So perhaps, so it's still very early days on this. We're still, there's a weekly supply out there. We're still under a 4 day supply here. So don't get too overexcited. But, we've had enough of these week or two of sideways before it just dies again. So, but you can keep an eye on that. If we do make so there's a 2 day demand actually, so I put it in. It hasn't confirmed this 2 day yet, but again, like if this does manage to push higher in here, comes back, tests the 2 day demand, then maybe it is time to go back into Ether, and hope that that doesn't mean that the Ether US dollar pair is just going to fall less than the Bitcoin pair, the Bitcoin US dollar pair. But yeah, so again, like we keep looking for bounces on this, we keep getting them, and then they die shortly after. So, take it with a pinch of salt. And again, just manage your risk if you are in that. Similarly, on the CME pair, we have the gap below from last night. We've just filled the gap from when was this? Uh, Start of April, really. Looks like we have just filled that one now, so I can delete that. There's another one, the small one that was left up here. I argue, it depends if you argue that the wick should be included or not, but that was kind of why my short entry on ETH was a little bit higher there. But again, just be conscious of that. And this was again the August 2024. So obviously now it is relatively higher, but this is what I was saying at the time. We didn't fill the gap here. We had 2 hits to the high and then we dropped again back down. So obviously now we have filled the gap. So does look slightly different to how it looks when I saw the sort of similarities in that pattern. But again, and on the Ether, it is now in a 2 monthly demand. We broke a 3 monthly demand, and we were using that as resistance, and it has come back over. So what you'd really like to see on Ether here is it come back and test this 3 month, close the gap, and hold that as support. And so the US dollar pair. So as again, I haven't added anything to this from previously because I wanted to see more on it. I wanted to see, reaction, rejection here. Is this a bearish retest or is this going to make a higher low? There wasn't anything clean for me to put new longs on there, so I haven't really been looking at it. And also just because it's been generally bearish, so I've kind of been much more biased to short. So yeah, like I said, we filled that lower CME gap now. There's the other one a little bit higher, which is why my short entry was a bit more conservative. So a little bit, and obviously had trend line stops from at the start of April up here. So maybe we'll just take out April's high. Actually, April's high is higher. So there's an untested 3-day. So on this, obviously, there's heaps of levels above that I've talked about previously, and we could run through them, and we are starting to see that on some alts now. So, but obviously, alts need much less volume to be able to move. So whereas ETH is still going to need significant volume and it's going to need BTC to support it, etc. So it's not likely to just run through this unless it really does get some decent news. So it's got a new 4-day demand in here and a new 2-day, so you can look for longs on there if you want to. But again, remember that from a weekly perspective, the bias is still down until we start to see, that at least this weekly supply has been tested already. But until we start to see a higher high put in and then the lower, we're looking for that change in structure. And on the lower time frames, we don't have that yet. So I'm really on Bitcoin and Ether as well. I'd like to see that weekly demand put in. We've got 4-day, we might get 5-day in a couple of days, and then weekly. So if we can hold this by the end of the week, then obviously it's showing strength. It's showing we don't have a big, big sell off or people wanting to just sort of get out of people that are longing higher. So we need to see. I can't remember if I said in my last stream I added this circle because this is where there was a bunch of walls on Binance, like a real stack of walls in there. And again, if there are walls there, quite often they do get targeted. So, and potentially taking out this monthly low, and that obviously then takes out the whole demand. And as I've said before, the bigger picture. While I keep wanting a bounce on this, because we've had what's been going down since December, so really getting at least even if not a bull run, a bearish retest is something that you would hope for, even if, like, for example, like that. So we're getting a little bit of one now, but again, we haven't had anything significant for the whole of the year. But again, like, don't forget my old pattern that I've posted so many times, that this was. Again, we didn't get that retest there, but this was the pattern, so we've come down almost to the bottom of, like, playing out this pattern now, without much of a bounce in the middle. But then don't forget that pattern was then projected onto the higher time frame, so such that potentially this is what we could get. So we're kind of down around here now. Are we going to get this interim bounce? That's what we're looking for. Or are we still going to drift lower? But I mean, it's still very early days on this. It's a decent candle for the week, but it's Monday, Tuesday. We're coming into Wednesday. Are we just going to reject and come straight back down again? I mean, it looks like a decent candle because we've had such little movement, but a lot of the movement we got back over here, like the weekly candles, significantly larger than what we've had, certainly on the green side recently. So yeah, and it's another week or so till monthly close, and the 2-month close. So I'm looking for Bitcoin actually, if it closed around where it is now, could potentially flip the monthly supply to a 2-monthly demand. So that'll be very interesting if it does. But yeah, on the higher time frame, we've still got a long way to go. So let me have a quick look. I didn't look at Ether ETFs to see. I think there might have been some Grayscale ETF buying on Ether, but I don't know if it was significant. We did have some buying on Fidelity yesterday, a little bit, and a little bit on what's this, Bitwise, but some selling the day before on Grayscale, but nothing really significant to support Ether going up as yet. Yeah, so that's pretty much it on Ether. There's not really anything new, like I say. I haven't been looking at this low time frame because there's other more interesting alts to trade. But yeah, looking for those potential short entries in here to continue this downtrend, whilst being conscious we're on 2-month demand and maybe you're going to get the reversal now. But I want to see some. So yes, we potentially have made a sort of a lower time frame higher low, but we haven't got any higher high yet from the higher time frame. And yeah, so we're kind of just running in this range beneath weekly supply. So yeah, looking for shorts a little bit higher than this ideally. See if we get some shorts in there around that weekly level and with the CME second gap close or the 3-day up here. And if we start breaking this last down move, like if we get a significant close above 2100, that top, then maybe I'll be more confident of looking for longs on retests. But for now, it's still like a retracement of a downtrend. So yeah, that's pretty much it on Bitcoin and Ether. Where are we at? We're at 30 minutes. The only other thing, or the other things I want to look at were the totals. So Total and others, and then I can move on to the alts and I can sort of show you my thoughts on that. So obviously Total itself significantly weaker than Bitcoin because obviously it's dragged down by alts to some extent, and particularly by Ether. So Bitcoin's sort of up here relatively, and this is still just trying to break those highs from yesterday, similar where Bitcoin stopped yesterday. But it's looking okay for now. If it can hold above this orange line, maybe we'll get another push. And I don't really use total as much because that's too close to the Bitcoin chart, really, although sort of there are differences. But just have a look at it and see. Again, it's got the same 4-day demand. It did test the daily below, did test the daily below that. So, it has tested zones. And oh, the other thing on total, sorry, I should just say, is that also this was the only one really that has kind of held a decent level for where I wanted to bounce, weekly demand inside this 3 monthly zone. A touch lower would have been nicer again on the 61 fib and the 2 months being slightly lower, but again, you don't always get what you wish for, so it's not surprising we've had finally a decent bounce off here. Um, and yeah, I guess, if you want to follow this chart, we'll see when this hits the monthly supply up here, like where Bitcoin's at. If this does get all the way up here, then Bitcoin's going to be a lot higher inside the monthly itself. So, but again, you can use that for compliments if you want. Total 2 is obviously significantly weaker. We're given Ether is probably one of the weakest charts, short of the alts that have completely died. Um, it's up testing, weekly supply, new 4-day demand, same as, many other things. I haven't got the daily drawn in there, but I don't really need to draw the daily in there. But yeah, it's up in weekly supply. So again, similar to how I just said with Ether, we're still looking at that downtrend. It's been a long extended downtrend, so it's due a bounce. But we need to see Ether, break some of this supply and or hold the demand. So you've got, with Ether, with this chart, it's the same thing. You're looking for the rejection soon, and then to see if this demand holds or somewhere in here holds a retest. And hope that we don't get, so I actually didn't comment on Ether. I hope that we don't get this type of move coming off supply now. Again, that's exaggerated, but you get the idea. Total 3. So this is excluding Ether. It's obviously, again, slightly stronger because the majors are a little bit stronger. Or at least you've got Ripple, for example, that's still holding relatively high. It was a big drop, but holding relatively high compared to its previous structure. But again, still in weekly supply. The problem with all these now, and what I am seeing on alts, and when I get to alts, I'll show you. Like the majors obviously don't have the strength to just run straight through this, but some of the more bullish alts, although they've dropped a lot, but they were more bullish previously, have this chop through here. There's a weekly, there's a 5-day, there's a weekly. They've all been tested. So we are now seeing a handful of alts kind of run through all these zones. So that was just one thing I wanted to make clear when I get to the alts, that this is not, that this is what's the word, to be wary of, uh, just blindly shorting any of these zones because we could get some runs just run straight through everything, and then like the supply isn't that clear anymore. And I still have alerts set, where there are significant zones, because if you look at the higher time frames, here there's a clear 2 days, so a 2 week supply there. There's a clear weekly supply in here. So that looks very clear when you look at the weekly. However, when you look at the lower time frame, you can see it had that, that when that was the Trump wick, that went straight through it. So I'm not sure if that's going to be, those levels are going to be as good when they get to them, when the price gets to them. Um, but anyway, yeah, still in supply, still with the 4-day demand below the new 4-day demand. This again is one of the more strong ones. It is in the 3 month demand, but I did want it a little bit lower as well. So I guess I'm just not loving the fact, like all of these I kind of wanted a little bit lower and they've bounced a little bit early, and it makes me, it's the same. I had the same issue actually with US dollar dominance, where at the last bottom that, it looks like it's bouncing, but then it's slightly above where you want it to bounce. So then it's hard to know if it's actually going to come back or not. Um, Others, still under this local trend line, a bigger trend line above. I don't know if it's broken that on the linear, so it's trying to break it on the linear, but it's sort of tight against trend lines. Others also has broken the longer term trend line, which isn't ideal. So again, is this just a bearish retest, like a more aggressive one? Again, the bigger drop. But as I've said, we are seeing now some of the alts, run through this up into there. And I've said previously that kind of what I was looking for potentially on this was that head and shoulders pattern. So that would kind of potentially, yeah, it's kind of looking like that's a possibility. This, was in a weekly demand inside or 2 weekly demand inside the bigger 2 months. So it's while it's taking its sweet time and bouncing, it was I've been wanting bounces on this for ages, and we're getting yet another bounce. But is it going to break through supply? Is the question. And total DeFi is also one of the weaker ones, but again has similar bounce. It's come like right down deep in the zone, but now back up in supply. So it's kind of they're all exactly the same, and they're all still the possibility of a bearish retest. Total DeFi at least had that, a higher low, a more significant, clear higher low in here. So others, I think, didn't have that. Yeah, not yeah, no. So it still does have the higher low, but again, both of these still under supply. Um, so I'm still wary. I'm not as bullish as everybody else. Obviously, we've had a decent few days and a decent green candle, but it's off the back of Easter. Indices are still like sort of indecisive. So I don't know. And then I've had people asking if we're going to have alt season. So, we've got, on the dominance perspective, obviously, as I've said, I went through US dollar dominance earlier. Um, so obviously that still can go either way. I'm looking for like, what's the bounce going to do if we get a bounce now? Is it going to be a bearish retest bounce, or is it going to be a more aggressive bounce? BTC dominance, we're back up in the 6 month supply. There's obviously 2 month above, 2 month above there. I think these will wick through. Yeah, so they're not necessarily good levels. I just wanted to have some more levels in there. I should probably put some of these lower time frames in here as well, just so we can see as and when price comes back up there. And that might be a 2 day or a 3 day, but um, and then there's obviously a 2 day in here that's rejected before. That may have been hit already. No, not quite. Um, So we've just had this slow grind up, and again, not been testing previous levels. But I mean, I don't love BTC dominance anyway. I prefer the US dollar dominance. But at the moment, this is still in an uptrend. Ether dominance, as I've said, um, has taken out. So this is looking, slightly better, but we still need to see a close. Shrink that back down again. We still need to see a decent close and some demand hold. But Ether dominance has just taken out this all-time low, or at least for as far as back as the chart goes anyway. Um, and is back up in 4 day supply, but is still, again, still needs a bit more time and consolidation just to see what it's going to do here. It could just run straight up from here if it wants, but ideally you want to see it test this 2 day demand down here before an up move. Others dominance again, I'm still remain bearish on this because I can't not, it's clinging to support. So we've had this low here. We took out the low there with a small bounce. We've taken out the low a little bit more here. Still clinging on. It hasn't sort of fallen off a cliff. If it is going to fall off a cliff, it's got a long way to fall. It will fall most likely all the way down there, and I still probably expect that at this stage, unless I see some supply taken out. So again, we've still got. This is weak supply because it's not had significant break of this low, although it's trying. But yeah, so the sort of weekly and monthly close is going to be a little bit critical here. If this gets a bounce here, there could be a nice bounce. It could run up to this 2 month zone here. So from a macro perspective, if we do get a bigger bounce on alts, that would be the first place I'd be looking to start shorting alts. Failing that, if it goes higher up in the supply here. But this is not really a level that I'm that confident of. I was kind of looking back over here, where it sort of falls off and it's sort of clinging on similarly here before another drop. So just be a little bit careful before FOMOing into every alt. Um, and also been fine though, really, for the most part. Like I think that yesterday, at the start of the month, I had some, the longs were, some were working, but we're less confident on the longs. So maybe only 50, 60% of the long entries were holding and they were breaking, and the shorts were much more reliable. We've flipped that a little bit in the last couple of days. So some of the alts are being more aggressive and running through supply. Um, but again, I think for the most part, still either they're still in supply. Like I think a couple have run through where I've been more aggressive, but quite a lot of just either consolidating or holding in supply and just thinking about things. And we've also got some quite large zones to test. So again, like things can go, even if I alerted here on, for example, on an alt chart saying this is a 3 week supply, obviously it can spend significant time in here and still play out the 3 week. Um, but yeah, so on this is week supply because it hasn't really significantly broken the low, but again, it's still in this local downtrend, so it doesn't make me particularly confident as yet, other than the fact again we're on support second test. And then finally, total DeFi. If it's going to load for me. So as you can see anyway, even without the rest of the drawings loaded, we are now down in this weekly demand and we've taken out that low. So it is potentially a good point for total DeFi to bounce the dominance pair. Um, but again, it's early days and we still need to get back up through to some supply to see what happens. Um, Internet's getting progressively more ropey. So I think I'm going to finish this video now. Here we go. Um, the other thing on total DeFi is, yeah, we had this annual supply, and I think this has been created after, I think it was a 6 month before, and then that test is from December, so hasn't actually tested this zone yet, and has this 2 month in here. So, um, I know some people will be very bullish on this type of pattern, but for me, I at least just want to see some sort of sideways consolidation before a bigger up move. And it's the challenge is, are you just going to get something like this that just runs through everything? And that's why I just say trade both directions, and then you're covered no matter what happens. Like short when things hit supply and long when things hit demand, and then it's up to you if you want to hold it or if you want to exit. So on a trade like this, whether you want to exit on that 5 day or just hold it in the hope that we're going to get a bigger market bounce, that's up to you. A lot of the alts now have like these new 4 day demands, so I would certainly say on the stronger ones, it's worth looking at those 4 days to get some long entries. Anyway, that is about it. I want to, yeah, so I'll finish this and then I can upload the video. So you get that quick update of sort of where I'm at with things and just see the charts. And yeah, please like, subscribe, and follow if you're interested and you want to see more. I will do a majors video later and also the alt alerts, which are the heaps are coming in. So over the last few days, and yeah, like I said, we're starting to see some reactions, some running through. Like I think this is deep. This ran through a little bit, but yeah, a lot of alerts. So if you're in my channel, then you'll get the alerts coming through on Telegram, and then yeah, you just do your own analysis and trade according to what you see and according to what the rest of the market's doing at the time things hit. Yeah, so please like and subscribe, and please follow my Telegram channel, and have a good afternoon.